Dobry Jutro Tuberovsky. So, libertarianism is fascism light? How can anyone possibly say that? When fascism is all about maximizing state power and libertarianism is based on deconstructing the state. Well, to an extent, I accepted that party line and also thought that equating fascism with U.S. libertarianism was rhetorical overkill. But then you need to examine the goals of professed libertarianism in the United States and its current Tea Party leaders in Congress and their plans for American society. As you may recall, the Tea Party movement began in 2009 after CNBC commentator Rick Santelli knocked Obama's plan to subsidize the mortgages of so-called losers. This is the rhetoric of social Darwinism, and it's always been the hallmark of fascism. Santelli also described himself as an Ayn Rander, after the intellectual guru of the American libertarian movement. What does that have to do with El Fascismo, Mussolini's ideal corporate state? And after all, Rand always stated she was opposed to fascist statism. But Mussolini himself recognized the connection. He subsidized the publication of her books and the 1942 Italian film production of We the Living. Rand's heroes are Nietzschean supermen, as in The Fountainhead, where Howard Rourke boasted he was the man who robs the thieving poor and gives back to the producing rich. And her hero John Galt in Atlas Shrugged flatly stated, and I quote, "The man at the top of the intellectual pyramid contributes the most to all those below him, but gets nothing except his material payment, receiving no intellectual bonus from others to add to the value of his time. The man at the bottom who, left to himself, would starve in his helpless ineptitude, contributes nothing to those above him but receives the bonus of all their brains." Now, as a real-life John Galt would know, the material payment, the excessive material payment that he gets for his services, enables him to buy everything and everyone in the surrounding society. Any good and service that's made or offered, any person from peon to president. So, aside from that bit of hypocrisy, to those of you familiar with the American South, this philosophy should also sound familiar. It's a master classism that, in this case, avoids the issue of race, just as it overlooks the necessity of forced labor to keep this master class on top. And that, of course, is where the role of the state would come in. The ideal of Ayn Rand, if I can pronounce his name correctly, which is, of course, not her real name, being Rosenbaum, is the personalized private state of South Carolina circa 1880, where all revolves around private noblesse oblige, and an ideology that is certainly feudal and is all but fascist in name, dominating public discourse. Speaking of Ayn Rand, the truly ironic thing about her is that although she came from a privileged family in Tsarist Russia, as a woman and a Jew, she never got a break to enter a Russian university until after the revolution and the Bolsheviks' affirmative action program for promoting women and minorities. A very close parallel to Condoleezza Rice, another socially promoted biter of the feeding hand. This ideology not only permeates the libertarian movement as such, but is also the guiding light in its grip on the institutional structures of the United States. House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan and his Path to Prosperity is a case in point, where punishing the weak and rewarding the strong is a social Darwinist fiscal blueprint for rescuing the republic from its alleged crisis. And remember, these are the same folks who tell you that the U.S. is a republic, not a democracy, so let's keep it that way. The democratic state is what they seek to deconstruct. And that's why Tea Party libertarians like Paul Ryan and his shining Path to Prosperity, author Ayn Rand, and fascism are all reading off the same page when it comes to the essentials of social policy. Okay? Lower tax rates on the master class of 25% until you can abolish the IRS altogether with a 10% flat tax. Slash Pell Grants, food stamps, low-income housing, wipe out Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and other entitlements, while rewarding the inherited titled privileges of the wealthy, who have built their fortunes off the backs of those left to their own destitution. We must ensure, Ryan says, that the American safety net doesn't become a hammock, allowing able-bodied citizens to swing in comfortable dependency. The hammock strings need to be cut. Let their asses hit the dirt with a wake-up bang. But it's quite all right to divert the tax revenues derived from those without breaks to bail out the corporate financial elites who fucked everything up with their supposedly superior intellects, and who are, of course, the major contributors to Ryan's party. Food, healthcare, education. They're yours only if you can pay some robber baron of the master class for these privileges. Otherwise, starve and die, the mentality of the Warsaw Ghetto brought home to the U.S. Congress, which is why they're careful to preserve the military security apparatus of the state, from the local level all the way up to the national. Because as Pinochet's Chile demonstrated, sometimes it's necessary to soften the masses into swallowing what's shoved down their throats. This is class war with a vengeance. The kind of market Bolshevism that turned Russia into a den of oligarchs and mafia in the 1990s, and they're able to do it because of the complacency of the American people, who take democracy for granted, as they took for granted their safety from the real world of other forms of terrorism until one September 11 afternoon, nearly a decade ago. Boehner and company are the domestic, economic, and political equivalent of Osama and Al-Qaeda. And if left to themselves, they will complete the job of rubbling American democracy begun by their fundamentalist counterparts in 2001. A knock on the phone. Who can it be now? Hello? General Augusto Pinochet? You and Hitler were playing pinochle in hell and he won again? You know he cheats. Anyway, you can rest easy knowing that you've won the bigger game after all. Yeah, September 11 was the day you overthrew the Marxist regime in Chile back in '73, wasn't it? And you're glad to see the young folks in America keep up that 9/11 tradition? Don't worry, General, the Tea Party is doing a bang-up job of bringing down the House.